How are you going to manage thousands of agents across all lines of business within your company and understand the interdependencies, the metadata, the rules, the governance without what you just saw? Click of a button, business process, click of a button, active agents, and now active agents and recommended agents based on priority. It's a great privilege for me to be here. I'm the chief evangelist at Salesforce. I've been with the company 10 years. I was a former customer. My company adopted Salesforce in 2003. The company was founded in 1999, so I've known Salesforce for 22 years. And the last 10 years as someone who conducts research, I report in the engineering function within Salesforce. So I get to work with companies like yourself and bring some of the best and brightest innovative thinking into how we shape our roadmap and our products. So great to be here with you.
Amazing. And I'm Xavier Lishinsky, Chief Product Officer at Elements.cloud. I've been in the Elements company and Salesforce ecosystem by extension for about a decade now. And again, mostly focused on trying to make Salesforce customers more successful with their Salesforce implementations. Right, Vala. So I would like to start off with the topic I know you're very passionate about, which is I think you called it on a recent call, the rise of autonomous enterprise. And I was wondering if you could explain what that means, because I haven't really heard that term until you've introduced it to me. What is an autonomous enterprise?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting something that I've been researching for some time now. You know, as an individual, autonomy for me is when you can make decisions and take action independently. So I love autonomy. I value it quite a bit as an individual working for a super innovative company. Both of us, I think, appreciate autonomy. When you think about devices or machines, when you think about autonomous vehicles, to be able to, operate independent of human intervention. And when I think of the different waves of AI that we've experienced, you and I, in the last 10 years at our respective companies, prescriptive use and predictive use of analytics and AI, wave 1 to generative, wave 2 to what we're seeing today, wave 3 to agentic capabilities, and then wave 4 physical. The combinatorial effect of these waves, these capabilities, will help us create self-driving businesses, autonomous businesses. And it's exciting and scary because you and I have ridden in a Waymo or a robotaxi. And when you see a machine in a busy city environment operating without a driver, or even in a robotaxi without a steering wheel or without gas or brake, all of the human interfaces have been removed from the next generation autonomous vehicle. You start to recognize the incredible innovation that powers safely, more effectively, transportation. And this cognitive transfer from human to intelligent hardware software is a roadmap of future of business. And when we talk about companies like Waymo in operation for 8 years, they've had 0 fatalities. They're operating at a tiny fraction of a cost of non-autonomous options that are there. So I believe the healthiest businesses in the future are going to be autonomous businesses. And if you're an autonomous business, you're going to employ digital labor. And digital labor is AI agents. And the superpower that we've witnessed serving customers that are on their autonomous journey by implementing AI agents, and again, Salesforce's customer zero in this space, so we've been on this journey for 11 years, and certainly the agentic journey for the last year and a half, we are removing waste. There's a tremendous amount of waste in business. Underutilized resources, overutilized resources, the wrong resources, processes that are too heavy, processes that are incorrect, and all waste are costly. And that's not non-debatable. So being able to remove waste means you're able to intelligently remove cost out of your business. So autonomous businesses are going to really benefit in terms of some of the superpowers that AI brings to the table.
And I think over the last 2 years since this latest, well, actually, to your point, the generative AI revolution is now a few years in the making, but the agentic one has just started in a sense. So we are having a wave within a wave of this very rapid paced technological revolution, really. I'm wondering, because I think a lot of people probably on this webinar and then listening after, they might be just about to work on and deploy their very first agent for their very first use case. You're talking about autonomous enterprises, autonomous businesses, or semi-autonomous. Obviously, humans will still be needed in the loop, but it's just about a lot of decisions and a lot of workflows will now run autonomously or parallelly to human activity. Out of interest, where do you think, how far away are we from seeing the very first autonomous business or autonomous enterprise? Is that, is that something that is technically, you think, technologically possible today, or is that something that's on the horizon as technology progresses, you think, in the next year or two? What's the horizon for autonomous enterprise?
That's a great question. When we think about agentic AI, I think in terms of the next decade, we're going to be producing capabilities and stacking capabilities on top of each other in order to have a tipping point in terms of the percentage of the work and the jobs to be done are subject to cognitive transfer to intelligent software. You take my company, we started in October, and by April, we launched an agentic layer for our services and customer success capabilities, specifically help.salesforce.com, which is our most busy, most engaged digital property in terms of how we guide our customers. And the capabilities that we produce today with an agentic layer providing that first initial support to our customers is far more superior than anything we've been able to accomplish in the 25-year history of our company, from growing at about 61% first contact resolution to presently around 85%. So, and that journey will continue to evolve and get better. Now, we had to ground our data models with about 700,000 discrete documents, and we're a digital native company, so we had a head start in terms of all the intricacies and capabilities that we need. And of course, partnering with companies like yours, we're able to approach this with a surgical, grounded truth approach, which allows us to really operate like chefs, not cooks. Learn by first principles, not by analogy. So to answer your question, some of the most high value, high complexity work today is now operated by agentic AI. You and I are the first generation to manage a labor force that's humans and agents. And so it's an incredible inflection point for us. For all of humanity, technology has followed a human-led machine assist construct. We may be entering in the next decade a machine-led human assist. And it depends on your risk tolerance. It depends on the size of your company. It depends on the industry you serve. So to answer your question, there's a lot of dependencies.
And in that context, actually, because I would like to also discuss how we get there. What is stopping organizations from becoming more autonomous, more agent-driven? But you mentioned a couple of things right now, which I actually wanted to dig into. I know that a lot of people out there on LinkedIn, there are a lot of people who think the agentic AI kind of space and capabilities are overhyped, and kind of they're using that often as an excuse that, we'll get started when the technology is ready, whatever that means. And by the way, I disagree that the technology isn't ready, and we'll get into that in a moment as well. But what's the risk, do you think, for companies and enterprises of just doing nothing in this space today, of kind of like, we're going to wait a year or two or three before we get started on that journey, because there are still some out there. What do you think is the risk or the downside of waiting and not getting started today?
First of all, I welcome critical thinking. Please differentiate between cynicism and critical thinking. They're different. And this is new and exciting, and we're very early in the process. But and the pessimists sometimes sound smarter, but you and I know in the long run, it's the optimists that create the future. So that's just a life lesson that I've experienced throughout my technology career. I also think that, like I said, when you're in an autonomous vehicle, it's both exciting and scary. There's societal implications when we talk about this technology, because we're essentially transferring cognitive transfer from humans to software. And so it makes us question our value, our sense of belonging, our sense of mattering. So the biggest challenge for me is understanding the importance of challenging dominant logic. Now, to answer your question, because people are inherently risk averse, I believe this technology is underhyped. So in the 30 years I've been in tech, you and I have witnessed cloud computing, social networking, distributed ledgers, and blockchains, and immersive technologies like augmented virtual. We're in the process of understanding the power of quantum compute and all of that. So, and again, challenging dominant logic. Salesforce in the first 10 years had to convince people this cloud thing is for real. And yes, you can take your most important, valuable asset you have, your customer info, and put it in this thing called cloud. And it took us well over a decade to cross that tipping point, and we still, have those conversations with a few. But when I look at autonomous, and again, I'll use a car analogy. The robotaxi that just launched in Austin, there's no steering wheel in that car. So what does that mean? When you truly
that's Tesla's taxis, right?
That's the Tesla taxi, or the Zoox from Amazon. The Waymo is a retrofitted Jaguar, so the Jaguar still has a wheel, but the next generation Waymo, Tesla, or any other autonomous vehicle, because it has AI-first design mindset, it will remove human interfaces. There's no mirror, there's no gas or brake pedal, there's no steering wheel, because you don't need a human to operate. Cars are designed for riders, not drivers. But you and I, when we get into a vehicle today, we have one job: drive the car, one job. and there's a lot of assistive capabilities. It can self-park. You have some full self-driving, but you still have to have your hand on the steering wheel and pay attention. When the wheel is removed, now you're fully autonomous, which means zero human intervention. Now you have what I call nonlinear optionality. What does that mean? Today we have one job in a car, drive. In a robotaxi-like vehicle with no steering wheel, you and I could binge watch Netflix. We can work on our process mapping dashboards. We can work on our Salesforce dashboards. We could take a nap. We could read our favorite book. The optionality that's provided as a car owner or a rider is nonlinear compared to today. So when I say the fittest businesses are autonomous, it's because the only path to nonlinear optionality and outcomes is when you achieve autonomous capabilities. Now, in the last 90 days, Salesforce has saved $50 million because when we brought an agentic layer to our services business, supporting help.salesforce.com, it provided us optionality in terms of how could we best utilize the men and women that were supporting help.salesforce.com. And we now have nearly 500 resources that are advancing their careers in different jobs that are more rewarding, more creative, more value add. So it's not just a productivity play, we're actually bringing joy back to work. And so autonomous is the only path to nonlinear optionality. And that nonlinear optionality is going to make or break businesses. And in order to get to that autonomous state, you need the technology that we're about to demonstrate to you in the latter part of this webinar. Because without the ability to have grounded truth in terms of your business process, and all of the interdependencies, the stakeholders, the data, the metadata, the rules, the governance, you cannot, in a composable, surgical manner, build the next generation autonomous business. So I hope that the folks that are paying attention, please view what you're about to see in this demonstration as really the only viable path that I see on this journey of becoming a self-driven business.
And on that note, Vala, one thing that I've been thinking a lot about AI and agents, not only because we're building a lot of AI-assisted capabilities within Elements.cloud, but also because I run a fairly big department, and I'm constantly thinking, how can we improve efficiency and take away all the tasks that people hate, the ones that take too long and stuff like that. But one of the things I've realized over the last year, as we started deploying more and more agents internally on Agentforce platform, actually, and also others parallelly to that, is there is one thing I personally believe is you can have an autonomous enterprise in the next decade, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all of the operations will be supported by autonomous agents, because I think within agentic or AI capabilities, I distinguish between different applications. There are the AI workflows, there are the conversational agents, autonomous agents, and actually there's still a lot of place for good old-fashioned flows, Apex, and deterministic automation. Sure. One of the things I see people struggle with is, it's to your point, what you guys did with Salesforce and the support side. We've deployed an agent for our support side. This is one of the easiest use cases, the most obvious use cases, the highest ROI use cases, and implementation-wise, also one of the easiest ones, where the value is almost immediate and it works very well. And then a lot of folks go, okay, what's next? We've deployed agent, we've done to the next project. Where else can we see the results? And because we're going to talk about processes a lot, one of the things I would like to show is a simplified framework I've been working on. I was actually demoing it at TDX in London earlier this month, and we had a long session about this at Architects Dreaming. Is that there is actually, and reach out to me if you'd like to learn more. I have some blog coming out on Elements.cloud site soon that covers that as well. But there are very distinct patterns of what type of jobs to be done and activities can be handled by which type of automation best. And by the way, I know this slide breaks every rule in terms of too much text, very complex. That's kind of the point as well. Is I still took a lot of words out, but the point was the kind of the mindset of analyzing your use cases, your processes internally, and figuring out which tool, your flows or Apex, your AI workflows, which in case of Agentforce platform means using a flow or Apex with calling a prompt template, for instance, a conversational agent, which is what we would know as agents on Agentforce platform, autonomous agents. Where are they best suited? Because it's not, oh, we can use either one. I'll give you an example, by the way, guys. The very first agent we've built, when we got our hands on Agentforce platform, we tried to pick some low-risk process to test it out, and we built a conversational agent for booking a vacation. And it works, and it's nice, and it does the job. But one of the things we've realized in hindsight is we should have never built that particular agent. And the reason is we still have a screen flow, which allows you to book a vacation. And screen flow works way faster and is kind of better for that particular use case than a conversational agent. Why? because we as users, all we have to provide is start date, end date, number of days taken. That's very structured data. It's something, an event that user or starts. It's a and the rules are it doesn't actually approve the vacations. If that was the case, sure, the agent, it just goes who's your line manager who needs to approve it and creates approval record and approval process, and therefore it's a very predictable, very algorithmic, deterministic outcome. That's not really the best use of an agent. ScreenFlow still reigns supreme for that particular use case. So it's actually where to use an agent, where to use an AI workflow, when to use autonomous agent, right? And what sort of attributes we're looking for to make the determination is complex. It's actually, well, it's not complex. It requires some deep thought and analysis.
It does. And
to do that deep analysis, you need to actually understand, and coming back to your point from a moment ago, Vala, you need to understand your processes. You need to understand how your organization works. And that's actually the challenge, isn't it? Because I don't know, Vala, how about you? How many organizations, I mean, other than Salesforce, but have you known where there's deep, as you said, rooted in reality, understanding of how the business operates? Because I have to be honest,
very few. I think you and I probably could count on one hand. But again, when I think about you talk about risk and risk tolerance, and when I think about accountability and precision and grounded truth, all these, I think about athletes. Because when you're an athlete at the highest level, or a professional athlete, no matter what sport, and the sport could be asynchronous, like a tennis player, it's just you, or it could be synchronous. You're on a football team, you're on a pitch, and you've got dependency with your defense and your offense and your goalie and so on and so forth. In the world of business, there's asynchronous and synchronous work, but you want to operate like athletes. There's a scoreboard. You know how many points you had, goals, assists, penalties. Everybody who's watching knows how you contributed to the team winning or losing. Highest level accountability, in my point of view, is a professional athlete. And you compete, and pressure is a privilege. You want to make the playoffs. You want to compete where winning and losing is defined by inches. So when I think about agents and designing agents, where you want the agent to operate like a professional athlete, to me, it's the x-axis. It's your capability, low capability, high capability, low to high. The y-axis is reliability, low reliability, high reliability. So reliability and capability. A champion agent is highly capable all the time. So it's highly reliable and highly capable. That's how you win championships. A prodigy, someone who has the potential to be a champion, can do really difficult tasks, highly capable, but they're not always reliable. They have moments of greatness, but not consistent. So prodigy is on the lower right, champion is on the upper right. A workhorse is someone that can do highly reliable, but low capability. And then the lower quadrant is low capability, low reliability, and that's just a generalist. When you define your business process accurately, you're able to identify all the metadata, interdependencies, flows, automation, documents. You create that metadata library so you can see processes that are complicated and they need to be reliable because your stakeholders could be customer facing, it could be partner facing. So your business process map, when it's accurately presented, shows you, do you need to be a champion? Do you need to be a prodigy? Can you get away with being a generalist? Do you need to be a workhorse? So your visual interpretation of a business process tells you the level of maturity you need in your agents. And without an accurate process map that's dynamically created and modified like a living entity as it should be, you're not going to build champion agents, which means you could have reputational damage, you could have brand damage, you could lose market share. Your ability to compete is limited by how accurate you have visibility of your business process and how you can quickly implement agents based on your capability and reliability requirements. And that varies from business to business, and so it's incredibly important. And I think to answer your question, how many companies have this capability? We have incredible number of blind spots in how we run our businesses because we don't have accurate visibility of the business process. We don't have accurate understanding of the interdependencies of our stakeholders. And frankly, we don't have a living metadata library that allows us to tweak like surgeons what we need in order to get the most out of our stakeholders.
Let me actually pick up on that because there's something rather subtle in what we've been discussing so far that I would like to shine a light on, which is, and you've said it at the very beginning, like you need process to really get the most out of agentic revolution. And now you once again underscore the value of understanding your processes. We've been told, and at the very beginning also said, you can employ agents to fix issues in your business. So we've all had a lot of these talking points that AI is only as good as the data. There's a lot of people saying, oh, you need clean data. You really need to get your data in order before you use AI. It is only partially true. You need to, for some use cases, you need, when your agent's going to make some decisions based on data in your org, obviously you need to make sure that the data is good so the decisions are based on accurate data. But But there are plenty of use cases, and a lot of agents we have built internally in Elements on the Agentforce platform have been built to actually help us with the data quality. Just so actually, next week we're going live with a very little AI workflow actually that makes so much of a difference to us, which is when there are some bugs that need to be fixed, customers raise cases. There's the bug that is raised. If there's an issue identified, it gets sent to Jira for us to work on. Except for the quality of the descriptions on those bugs is usually very poor, and not enough technical details provided for my team or many of my teams to really know how to proceed. And we waste a lot of cycles kind of going back and forth and getting more information. And we have this very nice AI workflow, which click a button, flow gets all the emails and conversations and transcripts and descriptions from all related cases, and using some prompt summarizes it and creates that up to the standard with all the relevant data, which by the way would take, it's there, it's just manually clicking too many screens, going to too many places to get it, and it's nicely then structured. And it's an example of an agentic capability to help us with better data quality, even though it's unstructured data quality we're talking about. So clean data is only necessary for some use cases, not for others. But to your point, deploying agents and identifying your businesses as a whole, your departments, you absolutely need good process understanding. And actually, I'm reminiscing this whole analogy between digital labor, human labor. It actually, to me, works on many levels. One of them is I actually have a colleague who doesn't matter which company, but started work last year. Some company in the US was hired. And the funny thing happened. He started, and then he realized that the departments he was supposed to work with disagreed that his role was necessary, and they saw him and his role as a kind of an issue. And within a year, he left fundamentally, right? And we have sometimes situations where companies hire humans and create roles that don't necessarily fit very well with their organizational structure and processes. You can build the cleverest tool, the cleverest agent, and just like any tool, any feature, if it doesn't solve the right problem for the right stakeholders, and especially now when we talk about employee agents, which I'm really excited about for Agentforce platform for like internal use, not just customer facing. Right. If that doesn't solve the right problem for the right user and in the context of the right process, it's just not going to be used, right? Or it's going to be seen as this annoying, why did we hire him kind of situation. So right. Understanding the process is absolutely critical to get to that final stage, as you said, Vala, which would be an autonomous or semi-autonomous enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, smart businesses have dual usage of agentic AI. One is, as we've talked, cognitive transfer, where the work is now done by the agent with minimal, to, in some cases, no supervision, hence autonomous. And then also cognitive upgrade. I can tell you today at Salesforce, 1 in 5 roles that's being changed within our company is guided by a career agent that does a skills assessment of the individual, looks at an open position within the company, maps the skills that are required. If there's a gap analysis, it will recommend courses in order to supplement the skills you need to do the new job. And so over the last 90 days, when we track how many job changes happen within Salesforce, we're talking 74,000 employees, 20% of the job shifts were guided by a career agent. And that career agent is serving as a coach, and it's helping us upgrade our talent with the necessary skills to do more joyful, more rewarding, more compensated work. So smart companies with proper business process mapping and proper placement of agent use cases can achieve 2 missions. Not only transfer of work, these highly deterministic, potentially low value work that sucks the joy out of careers and individuals, so they have a lesser sense of belonging and mattering as they should, and also upgrading individuals to be able to help coach and sponsor and deliver outcomes based on not a transfer of logic, but rather improving existing logic. So again, it's a hybrid approach, but it's all grounded in understanding how your business operates. Without it, you're running blindfold.
So I think we have covered a lot of theory, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this going, great, it's all great, understand your process, ground reality, it all sounds great in theory. How the hell do we do it in practice? So I think we kept them waiting long enough. Let's I would like to show them how all this theory and all these assumptions that we've been making with Vala, how this actually can, how this is a reality, practical reality today. And then we'll go back, Vala, to discussing the implications of that in context of everything we've discussed. Sure. So what I would like to show all of you is what we're calling process configuration mining, and with added ability of identifying agent opportunities. So just as a kind of bit of context, Elements.cloud platform is a change intelligence platform for Salesforce. A big thing we have spent the last decade doing is mining Salesforce metadata for dependencies. And it's not just dependencies how a lot of other people do it. We're very granular with our dependencies. We know which automations read or write or create or delete, and what triggers what is the order of execution, and really granular understanding of individual components. And what we have now done is we are able to turn that understanding of how everything in your org, what you have in your org, how it all relates to each other, as well as all this metadata knowledge, and interpret it to create the accurate as-is business process of how the org is configured to work today. So not how it was architected or what was the intention or what our design documentation from a project we did 2 years ago says. If we have that, it's no, how it works today. And then being able to also identify agent opportunities from that. And if you saw that complex slide I showed you at the beginning with all the triggers, inputs, outcomes, and oh my God, so many things to think about, actually, you don't have to that much to think about it that much, because that's also automated. So let's see this in action. Actually in the Elements, yes, I'm in Elements interface. I'm gonna, here's a list of my Salesforce orgs, and I have quite a few orgs connected. But for this particular demonstration, what I'm going to do is generate a business process from one of those orgs. That's one of our sandboxes. And let's say I want to understand particular capability or process, like how do we manage onboarding new customers? I'm just going to call it onboarding, pick just a theme of it. So what happens? First, it goes through all the objects, standard custom managed in this org, and goes, what objects semantically, based on their name and description, seem to be relevant to the question. Now, in this case, we only have that particular object, could be more, and record types. And then it goes, do I have some sort of field that seems to control the workflow? Could be status, stage, workflow. Do we have anything that seems to dictate there's a status transitions involved? Yes, we do. These were kind of these additional checks, almost, think of it as an agent asking me, okay, could you just pick one of those? Here are a few options. Which ones would you like me to focus on? And it will now go and scan my org, traverse those dependencies, permissions, general configuration, architecture, automation chains, and will come up with a diagram for me to view. Now, a quick story. When I demoed this back at TDX San Francisco, I was actually using an opportunity, and you can see it's here, an opportunity object as an example. We are a very process-driven company. Every project, no matter how big or small, we map out as a business process, as arguably we should. However, when we looked at, let me just change how it looks. When we compared what process configuration mining showed us to be the case versus our design documentation from a long time ago, there were huge gaps, because we didn't realize that there were so many other legacy automations or global actions or permissions we haven't thought about. So whatever we wanted to build wasn't what was actually delivered. What we built, with all the features, permissions, automations on top of that, all of that was built on top of everything we didn't even know was in that org or we built before. So the actual process was way more complex than what we hoped. And what we just did, I generated an editable. So this is completely editable picture of how this particular process works today. And I'm going to just move it across so we can see. And I picked something relatively simple, because sometimes with more complex objects, this gets ugly in a hurry. So we have a situation where on an opportunity object, any one of those people, these are roles, human roles, when they update opportunity records to close one, there is a flow that creates a customer onboarding project record, and then we see various status transitions. Now, interesting thing is, if I just go to the view mode, is we link all the metadata relevant to that step, to each step in the process. So at any point, you're one click away from either viewing it in Elements or straight in Salesforce setup. Already, by the way, we see that there are so many profiles and permission sets. These are the only ones we were able to infer as roles, and also have more than 0 users assigned to them. But it still begs the question of why the hell product team, my team, is able to close an opportunity. We have no business doing that whatsoever. We have a flow, and then we have these status transitions. Now, if it were a more complex process, we could see record-triggered automations firing after that, or validation rules firing and things like that, and this would all be reflected in this process as an input. What happens? Output linked metadata. So funny, this already, with a click of a button, we wait like a minute, here's your as-is documentation as it is today as a business process. So we already know how this process works, how it's designed to work within Salesforce, with all the automations and features and permissions and everything that was built through all the change cycles that we've gone through. Now, what is the next stage? And I'm going to switch to a test environment, because that's actually being released next week. It's the same process fundamentally, which I've re-imported here. Okay, I have this process. I now would like to understand where we could potentially apply agents, or maybe it's not just agents, right? Should this be an AI workflow, or just like our booking a vacation example, maybe good old-fashioned Flow or Apex deterministic automation is much better for the job, or maybe it's a conversational agent, maybe an autonomous agent. Which steps in this process or parts of this process are better for each. And you can see, for instance, that as I highlight on these recommendations, it says, because the trigger is variable, situational, it requires handling fuzzy and structured data. The reasoning involves interpreting and extracting relevant project details from the sales team who hands over what happened with the opportunity before it was closed. Completion is handoff, which is variable, judgment-based. For this reason, there's an 85% confidence that this process could be accelerated with a conversational agent, right? And if I choose to accept that recommendation, right, it will, add an AI agent resource. I will find a business requirement for me to, an epic fundamentally to put into my development design lifecycle. And one thing which is still also part of the Elements application is if I would like to then design how that agent should work and operate, we also have the full agent designer capability. So it's a visual tool for, as you can see, purpose-built for Agentforce, but agents in general, where I can choose when to apply actions, when to apply prompt templates. I can generate instructions automatically from my diagram to be copied into Agent Builder. And actually, I can go a step further and even review whether that particular agent design follows patterns and anti-patterns for agentic architecture, and actually prompt engineering as well. But that is not necessarily a topic for this conversation. So process configuration mining end-to-end, right? Understand and automatically document, grounded in reality today, what is our business process for a particular area of the org, identify agentic opportunities in context of that. And these are just ideas, right? We can ignore them. We can go, that's a great idea, but maybe we could do this instead. So again, it's more like a colleague, a co-pilot feeding you ideas, and then actually ability to design those agentic experiences. So Vala, coming back to you and the question, if you actually, Salesforce does have access to Elements, but if you were CEO of a different business, or if you were thinking of how enterprises could where would you start? If you think that you have now the capability to just understand your processes as they are, find agent opportunities, and hit the ground running today, not a year from now, not 2 years from now, but start on that agentic journey today. Wow, where would you start? And what does that capability? What are the implications for getting to autonomous enterprise goal?
Yeah, I mean, your company's risk tolerance will dictate your appetite and willingness to implement agentic capabilities. Any low value work would be subject to automation. I don't want any of my people working on low value assignments. So that generally would be a rule. Any low effort work would be subject. So if it's low effort, low value. If it's low effort, high value. Anytime there's a deterministic, systematic way of accelerating and scaling speed to value, that's going to be where I would start. Now, I was writing in the comments, the more hyper automation is part of your strategy, the more autonomous you become, your company starts to resemble a living organism. You and I are living organisms. Where our circulatory system, our lungs and hearts and our arteries and veins, we survive autonomously. And all living organisms are flow-based. So when I see a business process map, I see the flow of information that can lead to insights and wisdom and ultimately positive impact in an organization. And you're giving an example where you define a flow in, let's say, onboarding was your example. What's the flow of onboarding an individual? And what are the dependencies? And what are the documents? And what are the privacy and privileges and automation that's in place? And then you give me agent potential use cases. Now, it turns out that living organisms cease to exist. We die because of blockages. 6 of the top 10 reasons humans die are due to cardiovascular disease, aneurysm, heart attacks, stroke. It turns out blockages is why we cease to exist. Now, if you're out of breath, there may be a hint that there's a blockage you need to address. You may take aspirin. You might have to have surgery, implement a stent to improve your blockages. It turns out we don't have aspirin in business. We don't have ways to identify blockages easily until you have this process map capability. Because when you have this grounded truth process map capability that's accurate in real time, you're able to identify blockages. And by the way, in business, it's not that the faucet is turned off. It's just slightly turned, so you're still leaking water. So as far as the business leader is concerned, you don't detect a blockage. You don't fully understand that the water flow is not fully optimized. So it's harder to identify business blockages. It's harder to root cause. It's harder to fix and remediate and prevent. With agentic AI capabilities, you will minimize blockages in business. And that is an incredible superpower. Now, the fact that you recommend agents throughout the process, you're essentially identifying wasteful activity. You're essentially identifying potential for blockage, so slowing the value creation. Ultimately, if you want to stay relevant in a business, you got to deliver value at the speed of need. And unfortunately, because we don't have accurate understanding of our processes, we don't have accurate understanding of the blockages and wastefulness that exist. Now, you assign a confidence score when you recommend an agent. In an example, I think I saw 85% recommended for an agent to be beneficial. That percentage could be 60%, could be 95%. There's logic that gives contextual understanding as to why you're making the recommendation and how you perceive the outcome. Now, you're only talking about a single category like onboarding or opportunity management. Imagine with Google's A2A standardization that's being ratified as we speak, Anthropic's MCP, IBM and Linux Foundation ACP, Agent Communication Protocol. There are now multiple governing bodies that are going to do what TCP/IP did for the internet or HTTP did for the web, which is massively scale agent to agent and layers of agents that are going to communicate in an orchestrated real-time manner concurrently. So I asked the audience listening to this, how are you going to manage thousands of active agents? By the way, by the time we have Dreamforce this year, we're going to be talking at that scale at my company. How are you going to manage thousands of agents across all lines of business within your company and understand the interdependencies, the metadata, the rules, the governance without what you just saw? Click of a button, business process, click of a button, active agents, and now active agents and recommended agents based on priority. So what Elements is doing, it's actually prioritizing which agents you should implement and where and when. Well, I just asked the folks that are watching, like, how are you doing this without this tool? Like, how are you going to do this? And the answer is, I'm sorry to, I don't mean to sound, you can't. So unless there's somebody that's doing this, multi-agent orchestration in an enterprise cannot be done without the capabilities you just saw in the last 10 minutes. So the superpowers of AI and autonomous business will elude you unless you can map your process in real time, identify where you need to have AI agents implemented, and then try to do that not just for a particular task, but tasks that extend beyond your line of business. And by the way, you're working with other companies and solution providers. So your Microsoft, your Oracle, your SAP, your Box, your Dropbox, your Accenture, your BCG, your Elements, all these agents from all these brands have to coexist. And you have to be able to define business processes that invite all of these agents from all these different brands. And so interoperability becomes perhaps the biggest limiting factor, unless you can click a button and get the process delivered to you in minutes.
And I'm thinking about the implications for actually practitioners, the BAs, the architects, the admins. That particular process, even though we focus on just one recommendation, a simple process for a simple, not particularly automated object. And there were 7 or 8 recommendations. Half of them actually were to do deterministic flows. And I think the rest were a combination of AI workflows and agents. And I'm thinking how this works very well with Agentforce's direction, because now you guys just recently launched multiple employee agents, right? I can see how for this customer onboarding, right, we could have an employee agent, which is just to do with customer onboarding. And the 3 or 4 steps that can be identified in that process, that's the topics it will support. And it's almost like every customer success manager executing the onboarding has their own personal PA, right, who does all the annoying work, all the note taking and all the planning and all the next you should do this and all the summarization, and you can just read the cue card and okay, I'm ready and off to the next meeting, right? Like it leaves you to do the fun part of the job and makes someone else handle the the tedious part of the job. So
really, just imagine you have a budget where you can have unlimited graduate level students as your interns, and also remember the worst AI is the AI you're using today. So yeah. in 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, when we do another Elements incredible innovation webinar, the velocity, the speed and direction where we'll enhance these capabilities is unlike anything we've experienced in our careers.
So I'm conscious of time because you and I could keep talking and talking. I remember, there's actually more people on this listening to this.
I actually want to see more demos. I want to see more demos, but I'm sure we can reach out to you for more.
I'm gonna leave this for now. If you'd like to learn more about process configuration mining, you can scan the QR code now and go to our website and read a bit more about the capability. But I think with that being said, and it's probably a good time for us to open this up for any conversation, any questions the audience might have from listening to our conversation.
Sure. I've got a few in the queue here. As you mentioned, we are close to the hour, but let's try to pop in and get as few as we can. I do want to say great presentation, and it was so cool seeing under the hood and being able to see that in action, Xavier. So thank you for that. And Vala, thanks for all your insights. And you've got a skill for kind of distilling things down from being quite heady and really like getting to the root. So thanks to both of you for that. Okay, I've got a question here. You did touch quite a bit on some of the things here, so I'm going to try to maybe paraphrase or group things together. But one was asking about how does configuration mining differ from traditional mining tools or process mining tools? Sorry.
Right. So great question. So traditional process mining, especially when it's used in context of things like SAP, for instance, it's you're using transactional data to figure out kind of where. And you have also adoption platforms which track where, what people do, where do they click. So it goes, what are the paths people take. Configuration mining is more like, I use this analogy. So usually process mining or adoption mining is like having a heat map, but you don't actually know where the roads are. You don't know anything about the outline of the city streets. All you know is I have a bunch of cars queued up on this straight line, and I have a few turning left, but don't know anything about that. Configuration mining is more like having a blueprint of the city streets, like where is the speed bump, where's the red light, where's the police camera, so how it kind of all works. But it is important to say from our perspective that that transactional data layer, it is also coming this summer. So what we're actually want to do is introduce with the combination of configuration insights and transactional insights, a degree of, I'm going to call it very old technique, activity-based costing. So not only go, hey, you could deploy an agent here because of these patterns, but also because of the volume of kind of records going through and this is a bottleneck because an average record spend this amount of time here and this and that. There's a huge potential for cutting the cost or time in half. So actually that distinction between config mining and process mining is going to disappear because we're just going to merge it all into one solution to drive agent force revolution.
You'll also be able to score the efficiency of the recommended agents, because if you can timestamp transactions and notice that after the recommended agent, you were able to reduce 20% time from start to finish, you can stack rank your recommendations and fine tune your recommendations because you actually have outcomes you can map to set recommendations. It's incredibly powerful what you can do with that transactional data.
Actually, Val, you brought that up. I have a question from Paul. He asked, how should businesses prioritize which processes are more suitable for agent automation or augmentation based on configuration and data insights?
I'll take it a step backwards. I like the Amazon approach of working backwards. That's their entire philosophy. You work from your customer needs. Understand the jobs to be done to delight your stakeholders. And with the tools we saw today, once you understand needs, you can then assess and baseline your current capabilities and your processes and data. And as it was mentioned, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start in order to be great. Don't follow this myth of, unless I have amazingly perfect, accurate data, I can't do this. AI can actually help you improve along the way. So adopt the Kaizen approach of continuous improvement. But my step back a bit answer is understand your customer needs, your stakeholder needs, customer, employees, partners, and then work backwards in terms of what are the capabilities, what are the tasks, what are the guardrails and actions and data I need to deliver value to my customer. And if you do that, and again, don't let perfect be enemy of good. Start, like suit up and get in the game. If we're still talking about this by the end of this calendar year, meaning you and your team and your business, they don't understand